Welcome to our special series celebrating Black History Month at Michigan Athletics. In this series, we dive deep into the personal stories and experiences of our Black student athletes, coaches, and staff members. Each episode features heartfelt conversations exploring the intersection of identity, culture, and sport. Join us in today's episode as we hear from remarkable individuals within Michigan athletics. As we listen to their stories, we invite you to reflect on the significance of representation and the ongoing journey toward inclusivity in sports. So sit back and enjoy these inspiring conversations, which not only celebrate Black history, but also pave the way for future generations in athletics.
My name is Joseph Walker. I'm on the wrestling team, and I've been here for 5 years.
I'm Kevin Jackson, a wrestling coach. I've been here going on 4 years. All right, Joe, personal identity and experience. How has being a Black athlete shaped your identity both on and off the field?
Yeah, I think growing up, especially being in like a biracial family, I really didn't think much of it until I moved to Indiana, probably like my 5th, 6th grade year, where, I was, encountered a lot of racism, just like walking down the street, being called hard R and whatnot, and just like realizing like that I am a Black, individual. So I think like just helped me, shape perseverance off the field. I think just, being able to understand that like, there's people out there that, truly are cruel, but I think just understanding who I am as a person, a child of God, and just realizing that like, nothing can really harm me if I know who I am deep down. And I think that helps me on the field as well, because, no matter what struggles or losses or whatnot I go through, I know who I am deep down. So I think that's one of the, forefronts that are on my mind.
Right on, right on. And in what ways do you think your upbringing influenced your perspective as a student athlete? You kind of touched on it. You kind of touched on it a few minutes ago, just as far as what you experienced growing up and how that's affecting you now. But is there any other things in your upbringing that's influenced your perspective as a student athlete?
Yeah, I've obviously grown up in like a biracial family. Like we were taught to love all, regardless. I think having like half siblings who are white, I think is just cool in a sense, because like I saw them as my own, which they are. So deep down, like it was just like a thing in the household where it was just family love, regardless. So like even like in the field, like I'm just grateful for everyone, and just treat everyone the same regardless of their background. So I think it's just like a sense of mind of knowing that like no one's different. We all have our struggles. We're just put on this earth to do well and try and be great people. So.
Right on, right on. Representation and role models really important. Who are some of the Black athletes or figures that have shaped, inspired, or shaped your life throughout your life, and how have they impacted your journey?
Yeah, so funny, like growing up, I didn't start wrestling until late, so there's not really much like wrestling stars. I know like later on it was like Jordan Burroughs and whatnot, but growing up I remember Jesse Owens, Jackie Robinson, those are like the big ones where in elementary I'd always like read books about them and just like see their perseverance and just what they had to go through. I was big in track, so Jesse Owens was a big one. I'd always watch his videos or whatnot, like documentation about him. So those are like the big athletes that that helped me as an athlete, whether it was in track, football, wrestling, basketball. Just the fight that they had to have was something different. So.
Right on. I feel the same way. I'm 100 years older than you, but Jesse Owens was someone that that inspired us all based on the racism that he went through, and then going to Germany during the time that right before the world really blew up, is a person that you saw persevere through all that. So he was definitely a role model, a representation that we look to as upcoming Black athletes. I also like Muhammad Ali, and I think he inspired all of us, right? Because saying I'm the greatest and then going out there and being the greatest, it was a motivation, I think, for all of us, and it still continues to be. And through my upgrowing in my college career and even my senior career, that stuck with me. Just I'm the greatest, and believing in. I think Muhammad Ali allowed African Americans to say I do look good. I am handsome. I am pretty, and at the same time, be tough, be hardcore. dominate a sport, dominate a community, dominate society. And so he was one of my heroes. I also had, Bobby Douglas, who was a wrestling coach, one of the few black wrestling coaches in the country at the time. He's the only African American wrestling coach that's won an NCAA wrestling championship. Nate Carr, Kenny Monday. I became the second Olympic champion. Second African American Olympic champion, and Bobby Douglas was the one that told me in a training camp prior to the Olympics, you're going to be the second African American Olympic champion. Kenny Monday was the first, and that was the first time I ever heard that was from Bobby Douglas telling me you're going to be the second, and that inspired me as well. And so there's been several African Americans like Nate Carr, Kenny Monday, Bobby Douglas, that Lee Kemp, Chris Campbell, they're all wrestlers that have inspired me throughout my career, and they are, world champions, Olympians, things of that nature. And so I really did have a great role models, great role models while I was coming up to look toward. So I look to those guys with fond memories for sure. Can you discuss any challenges you might have faced in your career related to your race and how you overcame them?
Yeah, like I said, like being in, bringing of playing a lot of sports and whatnot. I think especially when I started wrestling, I had like a little bit of an edge because I just had that fight in me regardless. But I remember all through middle school or high school or whatnot, my mom would always get frustrated because she'd always hear in the stands oh, he's just an athlete, and after a while at first I was like, yeah, I am an athlete, I never run with it, but not realizing it was I am an athlete, but also it was it's because of my hard work too. It's not just because I rolled out of the bed and just I was great at wrestling.
Right.
So I think those small stereotypes of oh, he just has a blast double or whatnot. Granted, I do perfect that. I think it's just those small challenges of hearing that and whatnot, and sometimes I get frustrated because no, I am putting in the work. I'm sharpening the skills, so it's not just just because I'm black or whatnot.
Right.
So just realizing that, and then even starting wrestling where I'm from, obviously it's the dominantly white individuals. Dominant. Yeah, so it's kind of a little weird when I first started and whatnot, and no one on the team was there, so I was feel a little bit out of place. But I think I just kind of went back to realize who I am, and just my dad was always preaching to me there's gonna be times where you're gonna be felt like you're an outcast or whatnot, but if you just put your head down, do the work, great things will come. So
and I feel you in those scenarios too, because I know many times I'd be out on the mat wrestling, my opponent who was a Caucasian, the referee would be an all Caucasian, people on the bench would be Caucasian, everybody around the sport would be white basically, and sometimes the referee would start talking in your ear, and it seemed like I'm not only fighting this guy, but it seems like I'm fighting this guy, and I don't know if race had a role with that, but I also felt the stereotypes all the time from even now. So you hear people saying in sport of wrestling or other sports, well, they're just an athlete. Well, that's kind of a signal that we all have gotten to understand and know that you're just trying to base all of his success or his accolades or the things that he does well just on his athleticism. He's an athlete as opposed to all the work. And I think that's a stereotype. And I also think that's something that, that's a constant that hangs over our head a little bit when you do see African Americans having success in their sport. Not that they have outworked someone, not that they have outthought someone or have critical thinking to get them to where they needed to do, but their athleticism led them to where they need to be. And so I know in sports, if you achieve at the highest level, not only have you put in the work, but the intellect it takes to be able to grasp it, to be able to focus it, to be able to understand it, and to be able to move forward is a mental skill more so than it has to do with any physical skill or athleticism. And so I still get a little disappointed or upset when I hear that even in other sports, football, basketball, wrestling, that they're athletes, because it's almost a signal that what they're really thinking. I grew up when they would say, wrestle them hard because chocolate melts, right. And that was kind of a sign that they would just think that we weren't in shape. I always loved Ed Ruth going to Iowa City and just wrestling and killing his opponent and acting like he was hardly breathing. I always thought that was pretty neat, and I always felt like, I know why you're doing that, because you've heard all the stereotypes and all the bad communication about blacks and probably even yourself. And so I totally can relate to going through some of those things and overcoming those moments as well.
So for your personal journey and identity, how has your identity as a black coach influenced your coaching philosophy and approach to mentorship?
Well, I just realized that I'm different. As an African American, I'm different. I grew up different. I was treated different in different social settings, and even academic settings, and even athletic settings. And so there's many times in my life, and it continues to be, where I'm the only African American in the room. And I don't think that anyone, especially Caucasians, white people, I don't think they ever even realize that. They don't even, I wonder sometimes how many of the people, the white men that we know, if you put them on a continuous basis in a room full of black people, what their reaction would be. How would they respond? How would they react? Would they be as comfortable as we've grown to be? Also, we recognize that we are the only black in the room. And most of the time, and it still happens, that we're the only black male in some social settings, in some academic settings, in some business settings, and that continues to be the case. But as far as representing my sport, I had great role models to look to. My parents raised me to believe in myself and to work really, really hard to accomplish a goal. I do think black representation in our sport is very important. I saw Nate Carr on ESPN win an NCAA championship. That's the first time I saw an African American wrestle for a national championship on TV, and he wrestled for Iowa State. So that was the first time I looked out and said, "Man, I can do that. I can be that." And so it was my first time that I really realized that not only could I wrestle in college, I could be a champion in college when I seen Nate Carr. So I truly believe representation in sport, all colors, is necessary and very, very important. And that's what allowed me to see that I could actually accomplish some things. And I was fortunate enough to actually wrestle at Iowa State, the school that Nate Carr wrestled for my senior year. And so it kind of was a full circle on how I kind of saw myself from an athlete, high school, to get into college, and kind of Nate Carr, kind of that direction there.
Yeah, so what unique perspective do you believe you bring to your coaching role as a black individual?
I just believe that it's twofold, right? I bring experience of been there, done that. There's not anything from an athlete's perspective I haven't gone through. And so I bring that perspective of someone that's been in your shoes. The next perspective is I've seen every single level. I've coached and wrestled from the grassroots level all the way through the Olympic level. So I've experienced pretty much everything an athlete has to experience from an emotional standpoint, from a mental standpoint, from a physical standpoint. So that having that ability to share that information along with training, expertise, and more confidence. What it takes to really be the very best, and how you should be thinking as you move towards accomplishing your goals. So I bring a lot of that based on my personal experience, but I also bring in the understanding that people are different, that there's no cookie cutter way to train an athlete. Now there's a system, there is training phases, but this athlete might be more of a thoroughbred than this guy that's more of a endurance wrestler. And so sometimes you have to change that, and you have to understand that, and you have to recognize what you're dealing with. And then that also carries over to the psychological side. Some athletes can be communicated to a certain way. Some cannot be communicated a certain way. You have to communicate a different way to them. So I've recognized over the years that some people you can share and talk to them in a more critical way, and there's some you have to kind of soften that blow so they're able to absorb it, take it in, and improve from it. So I know that from my coaching experience that everyone is different, and many times they need to be treated and talked to different, and that goes from not just wrestling, that goes from talking about their confidence and then everything that they're actually doing in life to try to be their very best. And so I think from my experience, just me knowing that I'm different, and I need to be treated a little bit different and talked to a little bit different, and I bring that to the coaching ranks as well.
Yeah. And so, what legacy do you hope to leave as a black coach at Michigan, both for your athletes and a broader coaching community?
Well, I always think I can do a better job of this because I think that sometimes it's not my position to overhaul a culture. I do believe that in a wrestling program, I do believe that that we need to talk about God more. I do believe that we need to get together as a team and understand that there is a higher power out there than just self. I do believe that culturally we can get stronger as a team if you know who you are, what you are, that there's something bigger than you, that sports is just what it is. It's sports, it's fun, and sometimes we wrap too much of ourselves up in winning and losing, and then those wins and losses carry over into our personality. And so the legacy I'd like to leave is that you have a short window to accomplish something that you say you want to accomplish. You have a short window to do something that you say that you're passionate about. You have a short window to even compete, not only at this level, if you move to the next level, it's a really short window. And so for you to recognize it and also understand why you do it, what's your why for doing it, and never making it out to be life or death. It's sports, and it should be looked at and it should be treated as such. Something that is a goal that you thrive for, that you put your heart and soul in, and that you get after it to the best of your abilities. And if you don't accomplish your goal, you find the reward in the journey. And so I want our athletes to walk away from Michigan wrestling understanding that I was on the journey and I went full out to try to accomplish my goals, and it was about the journey, and I'm happy with the journey. I would hate for any athlete to look back, which happens all the time, and not happy with their journey, not happy with the way they pursued their goals and their passion, and all of a sudden it's over. And so because of my age and my experience, I do recognize that it is such a short window of time for you to accomplish your goals and for you to even do this. So to put pressure on yourself, to feel the anxiety, to feel the frustration, to feel sometimes you don't like it, and why am I doing it? I hate for athletes to be in that space, because it's going to be over before you know it, and you'll be looking back at it, and I hate for any athlete to look back at it with any regret. Can you share some experience where you felt a strong sense of community among black athletes at Michigan?
Yeah. I remember definitely, I think it was 2 years ago or so, I got an opportunity to go out to Los Angeles with a group called the Black Student Athlete Alliance, and it was like a Black Student Athlete Summit, and it was cool to go out there and just see the representation of different sports and athletes in college, and just kind of network and hear their experience. Mm-hmm. But one thing that was kind of funny, I was the only wrestler there, so out of all the college programs and whatnot, many of the colleges brought their other teams, but I was the only wrestler there. So I think when I went out there, it was definitely a sense of I am different. And like I said, coming up, being raised, I was not so much to look at color or whatnot, but when you go through certain experiences, you realize okay, I am a little different. So kind of experiencing that out there kind of was something surreal. Mm-hmm. Just seeing all the different sports, even their just accomplishments, but it was
all African Americans, all black.
Yep.
Everybody.
Yeah.
Even the people that were instructors or the people that everybody.
Even the people who were giving the talks or whatnot. So it was pretty cool. I think.
Was that the only time you ever been in an environment like that?
Yeah.
It was.
Yep. So.
My daughter went to HBC. So
okay.
We've been in there a few times.
Yeah. I forgot one of the guy who spoke, but he's big in the basketball and clothing industry. He has a podcast, Hot Takes or something like that. He's a basketball player, but it was cool to just see it and realize they struggled too, with race and whatnot. So,
what initiatives or programs do you think could further support black athletes in college sports? I think you just said one.
Yeah, definitely the Black Student Athlete Alliance. But I think sometimes, especially in college sports, when we're all in our own sports, we can sometimes just, forget our identities sometimes. I think we, find ourselves just focusing on, trying to get better in the sports or, in the classroom, kind of just forget who we are as a person. So I think, especially when I went out there, realized, I'm not just one identity, I have many of identities, like I said, child of God, black, I'm a brother, so all of those identities, I think it's necessary to, have those shine light on all the different identities you do have. So I think definitely being a part of a program like that, just to, connect with other people who may have faces the same experiences you have, or even experience the same struggles you do now in society and whatnot. So how has the athletic community and your colleagues supported you in your journey as a black coach?
I've had some pretty good head coaching positions at USA Wrestling as a national teams coach, and at Iowa State, and now here at the University of Michigan as an assistant coach. And so the way they've supported me is being open to me joining their team, whether it's Iowa State, whether it's Michigan, whether it's USA Wrestling, and giving me the head coaching position at some of those other institutions. So I think that's what I felt the most, is their willingness to invest and hire someone like me in a head coaching role. And I don't even know if it's the black coaching piece. I'm a little at odds even with what we're doing right now. I'm a little at odds with it because I believe black history and blacks in general need to be celebrated all the time as opposed to just a month. I really get a little peeved, I think, when Black History Month comes around and we start doing these kind of things, and the country celebrates Black History Month, and then a portion of the country doesn't think we should have a Black History Month. And personally, I don't think we should have a Black History Month. But the only reason I will support it is because it is the one month that in America they do try to share our black history, which is so strong and so swept under the rug to a certain extent, as far as the inventors that we've had in our society, as far as the intellectuals that African Americans, as far as the contributions, the overall contributions that African Americans have made to this country should be recognized throughout the year, not just in February. And I'm disappointed that we have to have a month to celebrate Black history, because we have so much history that it should be well known what our history is. But at this point now in our society, in our community, you have leaders that don't want to have Black history even taught in schools, and that's confusion to me, especially when we have a Black History Month. And I think this month might be in jeopardy. This holiday might be in jeopardy. The month of celebrating Black History Month might be in jeopardy. As long as our Black history is taught, I'm for Black history when it's taught in the classroom. I'm not a big rah-rah person for the month of February, and then all of a sudden our interest goes to, let's have a conversation with some African Americans and see how they felt about their history and what they've gone through. No offense. No offense. But I do have a problem with it. I do think it's not can't find the right word. I just don't think it's a something that I'm celebrating. I don't celebrate Black History Month. It's not something that I get excited about. Most holidays you get excited about, or things, and I look at this kind of as a holiday. Or, you know, as much as people make of Black History Month in February, I think it was a good idea. I think whoever put it out there was a good idea, but I don't think it's. I think it separates us from real history. It's not Black History Month, it's American history. And that's where I struggle with Black History Month. It's American history. And so just saying that there's a separation, just saying Black History Month, that means it's Black history and it's not American history, and it should be American history. And so I struggle with that to a certain extent. But I do recognize who we are, what we are, where we came from, the things that we've had to go through to get to where we're at, the racism that we've had to deal with, the name calling that we've had to deal with, that all of us had to deal with, that goes unnoticed because only we hear it, only we see it. And then you got some people that really don't believe that there is racism out there. And so really I think my job is to treat everybody the same way, to give everybody the same vision from a coaching perspective, to give everybody the same vision, to give everybody the same information or the same skill set that will allow them to reach their true potential, and also at the same time share with everyone that we're all men and women going through this world a certain way, and that we're not different, whether we're Black, whether we're white, whether we're Mexican, whether we're Asian, doesn't matter. We all have the same freaking experiences, especially if you're a minority. You've experienced, any minority has experienced the same racism, the same injustices that many of us have, and so that's kind of bonded us together as minorities. At the same time, we have a lot of great people in our society that really don't see color, that really want this society to be a cohesive family type of community. And sometimes I don't know if having a month to celebrate Black history helps that. Because why wouldn't you celebrate white history? Why wouldn't you celebrate Asian history? Why wouldn't you celebrate Mexican history in America? And so I think there's, I struggle with that just a little bit. Yeah. Let me ask you this. You're one of the few African Americans on Michigan's wrestling team. And when you first got here, there were probably less, maybe one or two. How did African Americans on Michigan's team affect your decision to come to the University of Michigan?
It definitely was one of like the little not like a driving big driving force, but it was definitely like a thing I thought about. I remember when I took a visit to Iowa State. It was felt a little more cozy. David Carr's there. They had Coleman. So it was like a little different. But then
quite a few more minorities, quite a few more African Americans.
Right.
On campus.
Yep. And then so when I took a visit here, it was definitely a little outputting a little bit. When I first came, there was two others I think on the team at the time. So it definitely kind of was something that was there in the back of my mind. I'd feel a little bit outplaced, if I'd come, because being raised up in a household, it's a little different, and even where I'm from, I felt and experienced racism. So I'm not saying all white people are racist and whatnot, but it's just knowing that I got to be cautious sometimes.
Right.
So it was definitely a thing where I thought about whatnot, but I'm one to believe that I go through. I judge someone about of their based off their character, And so when I took a visit here, Sean Beaumont and all of them, were very accepting and down to earth people. And I think one thing that like really got me to commit here is like his just willingness to give me time to think. I think that was the one thing where it was like with all the other coaches, they were like commit now or whatnot, but he was the only one that wanted me to give time to just think and just process it all. So I think that was the real driving force in that action. But definitely when I first came, it was definitely a little when I saw all of them, I was like, dang, I'd feel a little outplaced. But
do you think any coaches that you've had looked at you differently as an African American or treated you any differently? Not so much Michigan, because I know the character of these Michigan guys, but as you're gone through the sport, do you feel like any coaches have treated you differently than they've treated another person that's maybe not African American?
Yeah, I definitely
Or
experienced
black.
that. Like in other sports, I think. Like I said, like in this sport of wrestling, the stereotypes. Just an athlete or whatnot. Like go out there and just do as you will or whatnot. But definitely in other sports, whether that was like football or running, it was just a little more hard nosed on me. A little more hard on me rather than others. And obviously, like my oldest brother also went through the same high school, so they were already like kind of looking at me as I already had like a target on my back for a little bit. So I think just realizing that kind of I had to deal with, learn how to cope with it and just experience it all, because it definitely, affected me. Like, okay, like why is he a little hard on me than this guy who's one like not as good, but like it's just so it definitely affected a little bit, but.
How, do you ever remember like when you were an African American, a Black American, a colored American? I'm colored, you know what I mean? Like how many of those different names? You know what I mean? Like I was colored. Like I'm so old. Like I was colored. I was Black. I was African American. I was a Negro. You know what I'm saying? And I'm like, there alone is kind of a separation, right? Because I know my ancestors are from Africa, for sure. My ancestors. I've never been to Africa, but I'm an African American, and you can see the difference between why isn't she a Scottish American, or English American, or you know what I mean? And so that stuff kind of confuses me a little bit too, and I just think it's just the way that. I just think it's the way our country is. I just think it's just who we are as a country, and I think the verbiage that we use on a continual and still continue to do, just like February as being Black History Month. I think there's a separate. I think it further separates us. The thing about the wrestling community, for the most part, now the wrestling community is also a reflection of our country. And I see that and I get that. But the one thing about the wrestling community is once you're accepted, no matter what color you are, and you show that you're a tough person, a decent wrestler, and you're willing to train as hard as the next guy, everybody's looked at the same. Right. Everybody's looked at the same, and everybody's treated the same for that matter. And that's what I love about the sport of wrestling, is that it actually weeds out the differences in people. Nothing to do with color, nothing really to do with performance, just with hard work, what you're willing to endure, what you're willing to accept, and your passion for wrestling and your courage to walk out there on the mat and compete. And I think that's what I've taken away from the sport of wrestling, is that it don't matter what color you are, where you're from, or anything. It's all looks the same on the wrestling mat when two guys go out there. And I think that's been important to me over my life and my history, and just being an African American, I think we've dealt with different things than people that aren't African Americans, just because that's our country and where we're from. But I also believe that there's been a lot of people that aren't African Americans that have supported us and that have pushed us to become and be who we are right now. If it wasn't for my college coach, Larry Shacatano, I wouldn't be sitting here right now because I wouldn't have went back to school and finished my degree, you know, and he was one of the guys really pushing me. So, so I just think there's a lot of positives in the way that we came up, regardless of any of the struggles or distractions that we had. But one thing I do know is that one of the reasons me and my wife came to Ann Arbor and the University of Michigan, because of the openness, the inclusion, the diversity, the acceptance of everyone, of all colors, of all walks of life, of whatever gender. That was one of the most exciting things for me and my wife and my family when we made a move. We made a move like that. It has nothing to really do with, you know, African or Black History Month, but it has to do with inclusion. It has to do with support. It has to do with love. It has to do with, like I said before, inclusion. And I felt that way about Ann Arbor, and I feel that way about the University of Michigan. And so I would like to see that perforate throughout other programs, other schools, other cities. And I've heard this said before, is that Ann Arbor is like its own little bubble.
Yeah.
You go outside, these other, the bubble's not the same, or you're not going to get the same feelings, the same thoughts, the same treatment, the same respect that you will here. And so that was one of the things that was really excited about University of Michigan, and you see it. You see the inclusion, you see the diversity, you see the treatment is the same of everyone. And so so that excited me. And I'll push people to Michigan for the rest of my life because of that, because I think that's a big piece.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of Our Voices Black History Month Conversations. We hope these stories inspire you to uplift and celebrate diversity in all areas of life. To hear more inspiring stories, visit mgoblue.com.